Welcome to the Sharkpreneur podcast with Kevin Harrington and Seth Greene. Kevin Harrington is the inventor of the infomercial, one of the original sharks from the hit TV show Shark Tank, and has generated over $5 billion in TV and digital direct response sales. Seth Greene is the world's first trusted authority on cutting-edge direct response marketing, a best-selling author, and the only 3-time Marketer of the Year nominee. On the podcast, Kevin and Seth interview sharkpreneurs who share straight talk on what it takes to explode your business.
49 faces looked to him in triumph. Over the last 12 months, they had each taken turns and promoted his business for a week at a time, driving over $987,342 in revenue. What if you had a network of 50 centers of influence who promoted your business every week for a year? Grab your copy of the #1 Amazon best-selling book, The Ultimate Guide to Growing Your Business with a Podcast, at 33% off the Amazon price by going to ultimatepodcastbook.com. Again, that website for 33% off the Amazon price is ultimatepodcastbook.com. Welcome to the podcast. This is your host, Seth Greene. Today, I've got the good fortune to be interviewing Scott Alldridge from IP Services and best-selling author of The Visible Ops. Scott, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Seth.
Our pleasure. So let's go back in time a little bit. What inspired you? How'd you get into the IP services business?
Yeah, great question. First, I want to say I really appreciate your podcast. I've listened to several episodes, big fan. So everybody should give her a big thumbs up, 5 stars, whatever it is they do, and subscribe. So appreciate that. Yeah, I kind of started way back in high school. My day, it was kind of either you're a jock or a geek, and I was a little bit of both, honestly. I kept my computer in the closet, and I'd pull it out when my friends weren't around, and I'd play around with it. And when I was just in college, I had an opportunity to go into business when I was 19 years old, into the software business. And honestly, we kind of reinvented ourselves. Got software retail. We started doing small networks. We're doing software development. The next thing you know, we're supporting corporate, some small corporate networks, and bought into a franchise called MicroAge Inc., which was a Fortune 500 out of Tempe, Arizona, and started doing network integration, offices across the Northwest, with a few hundred people running around. And then out of that, some of our clients asked us to start managing some of their infrastructure on an ongoing basis. And back 20 years ago, you just didn't hear a lot of people talking about managed services, let alone managed security services. So now we are reinvented ourselves over the years through that story into different iterations. And the last 8 years, 9 years, we really lead with our cybersecurity services.
Awesome. And I'm sure the longer version of that story is probably in the book, and if not, it should be.
Yeah, the book gets a little more into leadership and some other stuff, but probably should be. Maybe that's more of a biography book. But
we'll talk about that. Yes.
Okay.
All right. So you talk about leading with cybersecurity. What is IP Services? What is your bread and butter client? Who are they, and what are you doing for them?
Sure. Great question. We really focus on companies that are, I would probably classify them in the SMB space. That's kind of a loose term as compared to the enterprise. So a lot of people like 100 employees up to maybe 2,500 employees is kind of our sweet spot. A lot of, 100,000 person employees are a good fit for us. And a lot of times they don't have the cyber experts, right? You've got a team, they don't have deep expertise, and particularly the cyber area that's challenging. There's a shortage of expertise out there. So I joke in one of the side companion books to my best-selling Visible Ops book. I say, you're a candy company. Make really good world-class candy. You don't need to be a cyber ops organization or cybersecurity. So we really do work with companies to add layers of security. In some cases, it's a specific area where they feel like there's a weakness or a vulnerability that has been discovered or needs to be enhanced with their cybersecurity posture. And in other cases, they just make it our problem. And we come in and partner, become an extension of their team, and they'll outsource the management of all their cyber and even some traditional managed services stuff from time to time.
Okay, so let's dive a little bit deeper. So if I am a small to medium-sized business, I'm saying 100 employees plus, what are my biggest problems that you solve? How do I know that I need you?
Yeah. It's a great question. Matter of fact, sometimes we joke a little bit. It's a little bit sometimes thinking about cybersecurity and adding it. It's like, selling life insurance to a, 30-year-old that's healthy. It's one of those things that as we read in the news, it's becoming obviously prolific and more common to read these particular ransomware cases. And we should note that only 1 in 7 of all cybersecurity breaches actually get reported. And sometimes that's because they're regulated and they have to disclose, but not always. But yeah, there's a lot of threats going on out there. And I talk a little bit about a story real quick about, recently a financial services company that we worked with. And they were based out of California, actually. And anyway, they had a problem with a particular hack, the threat actor that got involved and did some nefarious stuff. And as we drilled down to find out that one of the administrators had set up a new printer in the accounting office, and they left the administrative password as 1234. Well, sure enough, threat actor found out how to get in there, and through the printer, just having a standard password and not a properly configured in a secure way, they were able to get in. And they're smart. They'll sit there for weeks, months sometimes, and just watch behavior, and they'll use AI to see how people communicate with each other. And sure enough, sent from the CEO an email after they basically phished, and then of course emulated the email address of the CEO to make a transfer for $187,000 to a different account for one of their major clients. And there you go. And that's just, one example of many times. The sad part is that about 40% of companies that suffer that kind of a breach or a situation, particularly in the SMB space, can actually go out of business. In this case, they didn't go out of business, but 3 months later, they had to merge. They were kind of forced to merge with another company to stay alive. So again, it's some simple thing like that. So other companies that may relate that are listening, you may not think about all the different ways that the threat actors are doing it, and we know we're talked a lot about not clicking on bad emails and attachments, and you may have some security awareness training going on, but honestly, that's not enough. You have to have some of the advanced layers to catch that in case somebody does actually click on that big attachment. You want to have the right tools in place that freeze and arrest that so it can't go ransomware your whole network. The other thing is the sophistication. Really the ransomware, if you look on the dark web, you take that Tor browser and go out there, which you never should do, but you'll find a lot of kid that's a smart high schooler, middle schooler these days says, I just love the idea of hacking and, learning about it. They want to explore, they're not trying to necessarily be nefarious, but they get pulled in. And I was looking at a particular site a few months ago in a little lab project that we were doing, and we found that the franchise ransomware kits were available. You can join the ransomware franchise for $295. They had more advanced ones, and they'll give you a set of tools to go scan ports and vulnerability of networks. And if you can get in, break into something, they'll actually share the profits with you under a franchise share model of finances. And they'll also bring in advanced support to support you in your efforts. If you can't quite hack in, they'll bring an expert to hack all the way in. And then lastly, I noticed that you get their call center support. So when you need to settle up and the ransomware guy and you're talking to the threat actor and they want their, 25 Bitcoin that they start with, they'll actually send you their call center to settle up from your US bank account, because most companies don't deal in crypto and they all want crypto because they can't trace it. And they'll settle up with their bank account with their call center. That's how sophisticated it is out there.
That is unbelievable. You can literally buy a business opportunity, a biz op, to become a hacker. And they've got, how have they not been shut down? Like, how is that not illegal?
It's the dark web, and there's different elements and paths on the dark web. We hear about it as kind of this black box that nobody knows about, but you can, again, I won't get into the details. There is so much illegal and nefarious activity that you can get on the dark web. It's scary. It's scary what's out there.
That is really scary, and segues perfectly to my next question. As you just meant, cyber threats are constantly evolving and getting way more sophisticated. Like, how do you stay ahead of the curve? How do you stay on top of that, defending us, being the good guys?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's a little bit, like kind of the anti-rant, or I should say the spam, malware of old, right? We all had our antivirus software. And so it's protecting our systems. And then they have a new update. And you got to make sure you update your antivirus because the malware is getting around the way that it's catching it, cat and mouse. And it's a little bit that way in our world, particularly with AI now, because the threat actors are using AI, as I alluded to earlier, but they're using it in more sophisticated ways as well. But there's also a lot of great tools out there that use advanced AI to be able to detect and protect organizations and networks and systems from various types of threats, viruses, malware, ransomware, et cetera. So there's a lot to know in this space, but we've grown up in the space. I've been doing it for over 25 years. So you kind of become a veteran. And when you kind of live and camp in it every day, it's a little easier to stay up on it if you make a priority of staying up on it. And we certainly do. We've been involved in thought leadership for over the last 20 years, actually. We wrote a book called The Visible Ops Handbook back in the mid-2000s. did 3 iterations of that. We released Visible Ops Security before we called it cybersecurity, Visible Ops Private Cloud. And then here just a year ago, I released the Visible Ops Cybersecurity book, bringing it up to speed. We've sold about 370,000 copies of that book across the world, and it's been adopted by some of the who's who, both small and medium and enterprise businesses as a methodology of best practices. So again, we camp in it, we live in it, we stay up on it, and then of course, always learning, always, learn, unlearn, and relearn is always a really important thing. And then of course, write the prescriptive methods as we do in our book. We give away our secret sauce. It's not that necessarily hard to write about, but it's a lot harder to actually perform and do.
I bet. And I'm sure that you tell your significant other that all that time spent on the dark web is purely for work research purposes only, honey. Yeah. So what is the most common security? You mentioned click the emails and clicking on the attachments and the passwords on the printers. What's the most common security gap you see in small to medium-sized businesses today?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, 70%, the latest studies, still the biggest threats come through humans, right? That, social engineering, as we hear about, weak passwords, people still not using multi-factor authentication. Even though they're getting smart about that, they're learning how to hack your email first, and then where it sends the code. We call that centralized authentication. So you get a code sent to your phone on an SMS text, or you get an email. Actually, that's still a good standard, and people need to get to that standard. Actually, though, the next thing that people should be working on and looking at is what we call advanced MFA, or decentralized, where we use an app on our phone, an authenticator app, and it's actually talking to a server, and they both have a crypto key they share to give you that code. That's a much better security because it knows that it's contacting and it's identified the right person, and it's constantly contacting and communicating with you to keep you authenticated, versus just getting an email code, with some number or a text string where you're putting it in one time and you're done. This is probably the most common, is password, weak access, management to your systems, and then phishing, getting people to click on bad websites or bad emails. That's 70% of what is out there. However, there's man-in-the-middle attacks. There's a lot more sophisticated ways, and they're using AI a lot more. So they're learning to kind of not necessarily have to interface with the humans, but they're going through the back door, through open ports and weakly designed networks, firewalls that are not updated and patched. It's a little bit like the iPhone. We all get that little, update your phone, and it's annoying and you don't want to do it, so you put it off. You really shouldn't, because often in those updates, not only are they fixing bugs about the phone, but more often than not, they're actually putting a security patch on your phone so that your phone's not, at risk. And by the way, phones are huge. Think about it these days. We all, access our bank accounts and our investments, and we keep so much data on our phones. So you want to keep that phone secure.
That makes a lot of sense. Now, you've built an incredible team over the years. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, kind of excited. We purpose-built a network operations center and a security operations center, and we also have a data center. It's what we call a N+1. It's got a system plus a system, so it's fully redundant and backed up, and we're SOC 2 certified. So we keep it highly secure, and we validate that along with our systems and our methodologies that we use. And of course, we write on the methodologies following best practices frameworks. We looked at things like CIS, which is the Center for Internet Security. We use things like the Visible Ops framework, which is built off the IT infrastructure library standards, NIST 800, the NIST standards, National Institute of Security Standards. So we look to those things in terms of how we actually deliver our services, and through proven best practices that the science proves. It's not just managing by belief, but by fact. We actually know if we do these certain things in the way that we tighten down and secure something, that it actually does secure and it gives us the result. And so we've developed a great team here at IP Services over the years, serve a variety of different, customers, clients over a different span of different industries. We do a lot with financial services. We also do a lot with manufacturing that have certain compliances. And then, of course, quite a bit with healthcare as well, where healthcare has to be concerned. There's new HIPAA requirements out. So wherever you've got compliances that you're concerned about, we tend to be a really good fit there too.
That's awesome. How do you maintain corporate culture among such a diverse workforce?
Yeah, that's a great question. We do a lot of team building stuff. We have great team. And so we kind of look to do those certain activities, and we have some fun together. That's always important. It creates a little bit of camaraderie, but also everybody that works for us really loves the technology. They buy into the vision of the company. There's a little bit of altruism these days in what we're doing. that we really are raising the tide that floats the boats in terms of cybersecurity, because it's a little bit of the unseen thing, right? That people don't realize how at risk they really are. And yet we're reading about it more and more and more. We think small businesses aren't at risk, but they are. I mean, we've worked with companies that have $1 million or less worth of revenue that have actually had threats, ransomware, and hacks go on. So it can happen at any level, at any time to the business. So there's a little bit of altruism in our culture, like we're really doing the good work of keeping people safe and secure and businesses up and running.
That is awesome. You've achieved so much success and, leading an industry. What's your biggest challenge now?
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge right now is what I maybe started off and alluded to a little bit before. I'll say two things, but one is really getting organizations, companies, really the boardroom, if you will, the executive suite, to understand that it's no longer cybersecurity. It's no longer an IT problem. That's kind of the mentality. It's actually a business problem. And you should be talking about this in your executive management teams. You need to set the culture at the top. If you've got a board, your board should be being briefed on your cybersecurity posture, your incident plans, really going up to the boardroom. So that way it's prioritized. The culture set that you care about it. You're probably making room in your budget for it. These are all very important pieces. The other piece that's a little challenging is the AI thing. As a matter of fact, I'm working on a new book right now called The Visible Ops AI, and it's around AI governance, because a lot of companies don't realize. I saw a kind of unofficial study that said an organization between 300 and 700 employees their employees are running about 20 different types of AI on their network. And so I think we think, oh, that's so good, the efficiency, look at the reports and the cool things I can do with AI and how much, helps me do these things. They're not thinking about the data, the intellectual property, the customer list, the financial information that they're loading into the AI, that potentially you don't know how secure that data is. So governance around AI, do you have policies and procedures? Do you have tools to know that your AI is not out there running wild and, siphoning off all your data from your network? That's another piece that really does, keep me up at night.
Well, we greatly appreciate you that you're one of the good guys. Where can our audience go to learn more about you and of all the books?
Yeah, so the best place is my author website. You can actually get to my companies from their IP services, and you can see the IT Process Institute. That's just my full name spelling. That's www.scottalldridge.com. ALLDRIDGE is the last name. Again, Scott Alldridge, SCOTT. That's two T's, ALLDRIDGE.com. Hey, real quick, if you don't mind, Seth, one of the things I want to do in this altruistic thing is I got a couple things. In my Visible Ops cybersecurity book, we wrote a companion guide that's no geek speak. It's really for executives. Sell it also for $17.95 on Amazon. I would like to offer your audience, your listeners, an actual free copy of that. And all they have to do is just shoot my business line a text, and my team will get a free electronic copy out to you. So I'm going to give you my business text line real quick so that you've got it. And then there's one more thing. We also do a penetration scan test. We use a third party. We don't do it ourselves because we can't manage security and say we're doing a good job. These cost $2,500 and up, sometimes up to 7, 8, 10 grand. I can do a certain amount of these at no cost with my partner, and I would be willing to offer up 3 of them for the first 3 individuals that get a hold of me for your company and let you know, are your people doing a good job? You can take the report back to your current provider. You could take it to your team. Certainly, if there's gaps, we'll talk to you about it. I'll give you a free penetration test, and I'll also give you a free copy of my Visible Ops Executive Companion book. Here we go. Here's the text number. Text SECURE25 to 541-359-1269. Again, SECURE25 to 541-359-1269.
That is an absolutely incredible offer. I'm sure some of our listeners will take you up on that. Thank you so much for joining us, Scott. Thanks everybody for watching or listening. We will talk to you or see you next time.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Our pleasure.
Why do so many businesses struggle while others seem to explode overnight? Do you wish you had the secret to this type of exponential growth? Now, I've scaled more than 20 businesses to over $100 million, and it's not just luck. In my new book with Mark Tim, Mentor to Millions, you'll learn the repeatable framework I use in all my business ventures for massive success. Order at kevinmentor.com and get over $1,000 in bonuses. Head to kevinmentor.com.